discussion afterwards, we will stop the recording, so no worry about privacy. Also feel free to ask questions. You can write them in the chat, or even more welcome to ask them directly. So for that, you have to draw attention to yourself by either raising your digital hand or putting a cue for a question in the chat, and then we can unmute you. Also, to keep it a little more interactive, we will have polls in between, and you're welcome to answer them. All answers will be shown anonymously. And we also have, we appreciate your feedback, so we will have a little survey in the end. Bonnie will post the link for it in the chat, and we're really happy to get some of your feedback. So for everyone who joined one of the 17 previous meetups, this is how it normally looks. This here is a rather new setup. Yeah, as you can see, we're in the museum. Most of the events take place at Ellery Studio in Kreuzberg in Köln, as you can see here. And the topics are always changing. So we have ethics in design or AI, or the future of prison sites, the future of romance, or world building and speculative fiction. One of the few past ones we had, always presented by exciting speakers from science, art, or industry. But to be clear, Berlin is not the only meetup covering such interesting topics. Speculative Futures is a global network started by the Design Futures Initiative back in 2017. We joined as first meetup in Europe. I think we're also still the biggest meetup in Europe. And as you can see, the chapters there, there were a lot of chapters joining afterwards. I think we have about 50 chapters in this network right now. So I was wondering, who of you already joined one of the Speculative Futures event, either in Berlin or somewhere else? Maybe give me a hand. Bonnie, can you have the first poll? Great, I think everyone gave their answers. So it's an interesting mix, and interestingly, a lot of people joining for the first time. So welcome even more. It's really nice to see. I think we can end the poll. Oh, could you see it? Maybe, Bonnie, can you give me a sign if you also saw the results, because we will have it more often.
Yes, I can see them.
Okay, perfect. Then I can close it again. So today, as you can see, we're filming right out of the museum. This is the experimental field for participation in open science in the Museum for Natural History. And with me on set today are Bonnie Dietermann. She is the project coordinator at the experimental field in the museum. Today, she is our technical support. And then we have Lynn Harles, who is our main speaker of today. She is design researcher at Fraunhofer CERI, which stands for Center for Responsible Research and Innovation at Fraunhofer IAO. And she's also a PhD candidate at the Bauhaus University in Weimar. So let's take a closer look even who made this event today possible. I already introduced the Speculative Futures Berlin. The exhibition we're standing in, and which will be also the main topic of Lynn's presentation today, is called Food Fiction, designed by the Fraunhofer CERI. They are presenting 5 different scenarios about the sustainable food system and eating cultures. In the back right here, so you can also see it here. This already gives you a glimpse of the Beyond project. Beyond gives you insights on what bioeconomy means and how bioeconomy is already present in our everyday life and how it will be in the future. For this purpose, Beyond has been running and curating a number of events to get into dialogue with the even a larger audience. And this event today is also one of the Beyond events. Behind Beyond is the Institute for, someone's not clicking, is the Institute for Future Studies and Technology Assessment, short IZT, the Ellery Studio, and the Museum of Natural History. And both projects, the Food Fiction as well as the Beyond, are realized within the Science Year 2020-2021, funded by the Ministry of Education and Research. So after this brief who's who, let's take a closer look into the terminology. So who of you already heard of foresight or in speculative design? Who has knowledge about it, is familiar with it? So maybe give me your hand, and Bonnie, let's do the second poll. Yeah, so most of the people voted. That's nice. As I can see, I hope you can see it. So for me, it says that some people are familiar with foresight already. Most of the people are with speculative design, and some people are new to both. So we have a great mix again. So I prepared a couple of slides about foresight and speculative design to just get us all on the same ground. And for all people who are already familiar with it, so you might know some of the content. I already found a nice GIF, so maybe this is also new to you, so enjoy the input. So the leading question is not only how to explore the future, but also how to create the future. And the common framework to describe the future scenarios and also the future development is the so-called future cone. Dear future community, I know exactly what you think. So for everyone who voted with yes for speculative design and future and foresight, you know this future cone since your very first contact with future studies. And the rest of the group, now you do too. You will never see a triangle in its natural form again, I promise. But okay, enough with the kidding. So it's an important framework that can bring across important messages. And so going back to it, so from today's starting point, for everyone who's maybe not that familiar with it, I quickly explain it. So from today's starting point, it shows the whole spectrum of imaginable futures. So the possible and the plausible, probable, the desirable, maybe even the avoidable futures. And to spice it up for everyone who knows it already, at Ellery, we modified it a little bit, and we included also the space for utopian thinking or design fiction thinking. So why is the impossible important? Because it's not unthinkable. What I mean is even the ideas in the outside, like outside the cone, in the space of the impossible, can influence present ideas. So they can inspire, they can provoke, they can help to open even new horizons. And it's a little bit like Inception, I would say. Let's take a small step back before we dive even deeper into the future and have a look at the present. So we don't need to look in the future to understand that things are getting complicated. They are already right now. We deal with complex and dynamic systems and processes all the time. We're not only uncertain about the future, we're also uncertain about how to deal with it right now. And that's why we can only do it with transdisciplinarity. So we cannot explore the future along only a single discipline. We need scientists from different directions. We need practitioners, and we also need people who are really involved in the processes. So for that reason, also exploring the future or future research is also a way of creating the future. And it stimulates different ways of thinking and sets new impulses. And this is exactly where design-based methods, like for example, speculative design or design fiction, come into play. So they can present images of the future in a very different way, beyond books, numbers, or reports, and in this way also reach even more people or different people. The forms of speculative design, design fiction can vary for sure. So sometimes we have videos, sometimes we have happenings or performances. We can also have visualizations. I think one of the most common forms is artifacts, like tangible artifacts. But what they all have in common, and I think that's more important, is they use narration. They tell stories, they go for emotion, and they try to present ideas from the future as vivid as possible in today's reality. And also the areas of usage can change. So for example, with this, you can show different images of the future, different scenarios. You can also use it for acceptance research, or you can on purpose place them, present them, also like provocative artifacts to start discussions, to really get into debate. This one is a first attempt by Elliot Montgomery, where he shows the overlappings and the relationships between speculative design and related approaches. So on the axis, you can see from unconstrained to constrained. On the end of constrained, he located art, and on the other end, on the constrained side, you can find strategy. In their book Speculative Everything by Anthony Dunn and Fiona Rabi, they came up with a really nice comparison. So on the B side, on the right-hand side, you have the speculative design or design fiction. And on the other side, on A, you have factual design, for example, design thinking. And let's quickly compare both. So design thinking aims to produce innovations that are successful on the market. So it's about services and products that are as close as possible to the consumer needs. And design fiction or speculative design develops speculative solutions that does not aim or don't aim for market success. It's more about for changing today's discourses. And with this being said, I'm excited to hand over to Lynn and to see if we can set new impulses on the discourse of food. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dodo, and thank you for having me today. So I'm going to share my screen now. Oops. This takes a second. So, yes, there we are. So yes, I'm going to present the Food Fictions project today. I was working on the last 6 months together with my team. And we are actually going to have a short throwback about how the project actually evolved, what was the, probably what did we behind the scenes, and how did actually, what happened behind the scenes so that the exhibition looks like this behind my back. So to begin with, many people ask me how and why I actually became a design researcher. And I think this is a pretty good question to start with this talk, because the answer to this question will also help you understand how this project actually evolved. So it was once upon a time, like 10 years ago, I decided to study design, actually to create beautiful things. And, you know, shortly after I enrolled in university, this was super boring because, you know, shaping beautiful things, it's like, yeah, they're getting used for some time and then they end up as garbage. And actually you're creating garbage. And I was like, no, that's actually not what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I started questioning my own discipline, and I started reading books. And one of the first books I was reading was Victor Papanek, Design for the Real World. And in his book, he wrote it in the 70s, and he described how design can be used for social innovation and to save the environment, because climate change was already a topic in the 70s. And so for me, that was the complete game changer for the rest of my career. And yeah, so some coincidences later, I actually ended up somehow on a research vessel in the middle of the North Atlantic Gyre. And this is one of my study project. And I started to join scientists on expeditions. And that was actually the beginning of a very long love story with science communication. And my work consisted in documenting the work of the scientists, and they were actually focusing on microplastics in the North Atlantic Gyre. And it was 6 years ago when microplastic was not so common like it is today. So I was getting into science communication to documentation, and slowly after this first expedition, I realized that science communication is not ending with a documentation about the work of scientists. It can go further like this. So I got into the lab with other scientists. And, I was thinking about microplastics is a big issue. You can talk about it, but you can also change something about it. So I started to work a little bit on bioplastics, and I transformed these materials in like speculative everyday objects. And this was actually my beginning with speculative design, and also with design for debate, because I had the chance to showcase my work on an exhibition that was in Luxembourg, where I actually come from, at the Design Biennale. And the two people that you see is actually the future Grand Duke of Luxembourg, which was a pretty funny coincidence. He passed by, and so that was something where I realized, okay, you can change something as a designer just by changing the way you design. And a second event on my journey was my first real-life interaction with social innovation. So half a year later, after my first expedition, I had the chance to join a group of voluntary workers to bring solar panels to one of the most remotest regions in the world. This is a Phukdal monastery in Ladakh, or in the region of Ladakh, in the Himalayas. And we were actually bringing solar panels to this region because for those people, innovation was having light. So for us, we were talking during this time about artificial intelligence, about novel ways of mobility. And for them, it was just having electricity and light. And so I was aware that we live in very different realities at the very same time. And this is also a very interesting point when it comes to innovate. So yeah, this was my first beginning doing my studies. And one lucky day, I had a job interview at the Center for Responsible Research and Innovation, shortly at CERI. And yes, 2 months later, I moved to Berlin, and here I am. And, the reason why they have design research, why we have design researchers in our team, because we're pretty interdisciplinary, we have social scientists, people from political background, with psychological background, and designers from different disciplines. And what we are doing, so actually our very long name describes what we're doing. So it is responsible research and innovation. So now the question is, what do we mean by that? And responsible research and innovation is pretty simply said. It's not about doing creepy scientific stuff in the ivory tower and then putting innovations on the market without asking for acceptance or consequences. So responsible research is more about asking how novel innovations and technologies affect our society our cultural beliefs, and our environment. So therefore you need to involve, like Dodo already said, many different stakeholders from the politics, economics, and most of all the public. So when we talk about these innovations, we are not talking about the latest iPhone or things like this, but we talk about transformative technologies like biotechnologies. I mean, we can rewrite the code of life or artificial intelligence, and we still don't know where this journey is going to end up. And so these are things that are pretty hard to imagine. And now that's the turning point of what we're doing also in this project, because Dodo gave a very good introduction to this topic. So if you want to talk about an unknown future, you need to give people a platform where they can talk together. And you need to create visions of the future so that they can understand, or we can all understand, or we can be sure that we are talking about the same things. So the questions we are asking during our projects is how can we create tangible futures for society-based innovations and transformation processes? And how can we develop new ways of participatory science communication? Because science communication is not just about like creating some public understanding of science, but also involving the public and asking, okay, is this going in the right direction or not? And yes, food fiction is a pretty good example to showcase what we're doing. And doing in food fictions, we are asking how can we shape sustainable food systems and eating cultures of today and tomorrow. So the goals were pretty clear since the beginning. So we wanted to develop new ways of bidirectional science communication, so to involve people into these topics. And therefore, we wanted to create interventional spaces, as you see behind me. So, and we therefore wanted to create artifact-based scenarios for temporary exhibition. And the most important thing, because we are talking about food, so this is something which is super sensory. Sorry, my computer is just going crazy. Sorry for that. We are making the future of nutrition perceptible to edible artifacts. And therefore, we also developed a digital format, which was Cooking the Future. And I will go on to that a little bit later. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about our process. So what is actually behind, or what happened before. So we started actually in February. We're doing some quite big literature research, and we were thinking about creating a methodology, which I will explain also later. And after this, we started to asking experts from the scientific field and from practice if they want to collaborate with us, because we wanted to create scenarios in an interdisciplinary team together with people from the field. And we started with a workshop in May. And after this, we started, some of the experts joined us along all the journey. Yes, we were doing interviews, and they were actually giving us feedback on the scenarios we were building. And these scenarios were transformed in artifacts and an pop-up exhibition, and later on in an edible workshop. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the methodology, because, you know, as a designer, when you create speculative scenarios, you have a huge responsibility, because it's very easy to mislead a public debate if you create scenarios which is not which is pretty far from the reality, or pretty far from scientific facts. So my question was, and this is also my question in my PhD, is how can we create responsible design-based future scenarios? And when we talk about future, we need to ask, what future? do we actually talk about? And in this case, we are talking about mundane futures. That means futures that are very close to our reality, very close to our everyday life. Because, you know, you can also think speculative design is a tool to create past events, alternative past events, or to create alternative presents and the alternative sooner now. And the sooner now and the alternative presents, for me, is a very interesting field to speculate on, because it's super close. And when we're talking about the future of food and climate change, these are topics that are affecting us today. I mean, right now. It's not about, okay, we have 10 years more time and then let's see. So this is why this project is based on is based on mundane futures. And we're not talking about a very far away future. So we then developed a methodology which is based on 6 steps. And the aim of this methodology is to get from a scientific fact to a speculative artifact. So therefore it's called from fact to artifact. There's huge literature research behind this. So many readings, also some authors that Dodo already has mentioned, like Dan and Raby, but also Malpass and Tarp, etc. So I analyze a little bit what are these people actually, how are they clustering speculative design, and how can we create like kind of a guideline to get like from one scientific fact to a speculative scenario. So the first level we're actually talking is the systems of use. So in which systems is the speculative design actually used for? Because speculative design can be used for, you can do some social critique, you can challenge a business model, you can challenge prototypes, but you can also use it for science communication and public debates. And now this is the field that we are focusing on. And then the second one, it's the context of use. So in which context are we using speculative design? So what is the goal actually? Why do we use it? So in this case, it's pretty clear. We want to rethink food systems in the bioeconomy, also as a tool to achieve the sustainable development goals. The third level was the hypothesis of use. So what is actually the hypothesis that is the starting point? So like mostly a what if question. And this was the most interesting point in the project, because here every expert we are collaborating with has his own hypothesis. And so therefore we developed also 5 scenarios. They're all based on 5 different hypotheses. So in this way, it was possible ways to rethink the food system. And the fourth level was the narrative of use. So it's about the story that makes the scenario tangible. How do you describe your scenario? What is actually happening? How does the everyday look like? Or how does the society change, etc. And this is a super important point when it comes to create tangible futures. And the 5th point is taking this a little bit further. It's the cultural practice of use. So how does the scenario affects our culture, our everyday culture, our beliefs, our traditions, and will there be new traditions? What is happening to old traditions? This is a very, very important point, because often if we talk about the future, we think about probably flying cars and skyscrapers and all that stuff. And we never really think about what is the everyday life of a normal family looking. So, and then the 6th one, the most important one when it comes to speculative design, is the media of use. So which media are you using to to make your scenario visible. So you can work with storytelling, with text, you can work with artifacts and with or speculative business model or immersive spaces. So there are actually a lot of things you can use as a scenario or as a speculative media. And how this media can look like, that I will show a little bit later when I present the scenarios. So yeah, this was actually the visible result of this methodology. So we developed an interview guideline along the 6 steps. We were talking to the experts, asking the right questions, and then we were transferring all these questions, first of all, in a very huge Excel file. And behind all these fancy objects is actually a lot of work behind it. And this is the reason why it's called design research. Because you're not just creating something that looks good or fancy or I don't know, but you are actually looking, how do I get there? And you see here, this is the whole Excel file. You should just see a little bit excerpt on this picture. And yes, we spend in our team, we spend a lot of hours sitting together and like evaluating this Excel file. And it took 3 to 4 months to get from this file to the final exhibition. So there's it was quite a long journey. And the result, or the interim result, better said, is are these 5 scenarios. So the first one is the urban food market we developed with Stefan Becker-Sonnenschein, the founder of Global Food Summit, and together with the Cube Circle project from the Humboldt-Universität in Berlin. The second one is about meat, together with Dr. Nina Lang from the Technical University in Berlin. And the third scenario is about trees, actually, together with Tobias Brückmann from Thun Institute. And the fourth scenario is the open source algae and the bioreactor for home usage, together with the team of the Progressive Agrarwende. So different scientists with different expertise. And the fifth scenario is about bacterial food with edible alchemy. So this is now just a theoretical part of the project, and now we're coming a little bit more into the visual stuff. So as you see, we're sitting in the exhibition, and because, you know, due to Corona, we can see us live, and I see some people are joining us also outside from Berlin, and they may not have the possibility to get into the exhibition. So we take you on a digital way. We take you on the exhibition in our on a digital way. So as you see, this is the entrance of the exhibition, and then you're having a little introduction first. So something I will also going to present soon. And we did some brochures, so everything, all the information you can read. And yes, here you see the first scenario, the food market, which is presented with infographic. And so, yeah, you see, we're also showcasing how this first scenario is interacting with the other scenarios. And then you're getting over to the first or the second scenario about meat. So if you're getting curious, then stay tuned. And yes, as you see, we're working with different media, so mostly artifacts and visuals. And here you see the third scenario about trees and our forest garden. So, and then we're getting over to the microbiome scene. So there's a lot of text, and after the exhibition, you can also read everything online. And then we're heading over to the bioreactor. I hope it's not too loud in the background. So, and then this is the final stage of our expedition. It's the bacterial food. And as you see, we're presenting actually some food and some bacteria strains that were given to us by edible alchemy. And yes, there are our speculative. So here's a short infographic about the microbiome. And here are our speculative bacterial seed bombs. I will present them later on. And this is the end of the exhibition. It's a bag full of healthy shit, actually. So now let's get back to the so I lost it. There we are. So as you could have a look on the exhibition. For those people who are in the area of Berlin, you can still see it until Sunday. And you can also participate in this exhibition, because actually, you know, before Corona, we planned to do a very super interactive exhibition with like many touch points and many people coming together, and that Corona just, yeah, it just didn't happen. So we have a digital interaction. And here you see also a little glimpse on the workshop we had on Monday. It was a Cooking the Future workshop, and together with Ines Lauber, we created the Future Food Box, and we were creating or transforming all the scenarios, all the speculative artifacts in something edible. So some of the products I'm going to present during the scenarios. So here's a short behind the scenes of the workshop, because it was for me actually the first workshop I was moderating in my very own kitchen. And my kitchen just looked like a mess afterwards, but it was super fun. And also in these wine glasses, there's only water, there was no wine involved. And yes, it was super fun. And I'm going to show some of the products later on. So the first question, or maybe you were asking yourself, why are you actually talking about food when, you know, we are funded by the Wissenschaftsjahr and it's focusing on bioeconomy, and we were thinking about a tangible topic to explain the principles of the bioeconomy. And so we decided to focus on food because, first of all, everybody needs to eat. So it's not depending on your religious beliefs or where you come from or your age. Everybody has some association to food. So that was the first decision. And the second decision is pretty clear, because when we talk about bioeconomy as a kind of a solution or tool to create a sustainable future, then we need to rethink the way we eat, because the way we eat is the way we're shaping our future and our planet. As you know, we humans are actually the only creatures on this planet that are able to cook. And with the invention of fire, we started to cook some poisonous, we could cook food that were actually poisonous and something, something edible. And for this reason, our brain actually could evolve because we use less energy for the digestion. So we could evolve our brain and our language and our culture. So all our innovations and everything we are today is closely interlinked with the way we eat. And so we were also asking in this project, not only what are we going to eat in the future, but mostly we were focusing on how are we shaping future food systems, because there are some alternatives already, like, you know, insects or in vitro meat. But all these solutions are just temporarily, because they won't be very sustainable if the systems in which they remain stay the same. And the first scenario is visualizing this pretty well, because the urban food market is our fictional marketplace. And we were asking, what if we would think the principle of the supermarket with untransparent supply chains? Because the supermarket as it exists today, so almost every product in the supermarkets, we have a very long way. They have several packagings behind it. So it's not a definition of a bioeconomy at all. So we were thinking about, what if we could produce all our food just at the place where we buy our food? And therefore we collaborated also with the Cheap Circle project, and we took it a kind of an inspiration, because they were actually developing new ways of urban farming, which consisted in a modular concept. And we took this a little bit further, and we were saying, okay, if 80% of all our food is going to be consumed in the cities in 2030, how can we then produce our food in the cities? And so we were thinking about, what if like supermarkets, food suppliers, the agriculture and gastronomy is actually collaborating at the same place. And so, and as you see here, we created a kind of an infographic to showcase what we wanted to showcase. So imagine you go into a supermarket and you are not having this typical, you know, shelves where you take your vegetables, but you actually just harvest your vegetable at the very same place. So from hydrocultures. And at the same time, you can have your lunch at the very same place. The food is coming from the place where you're having your lunch. And there's also a fermentation lab. And why we put the fermentation lab into this scenario will become clear in the last two scenarios. And the most important thing in this scenario is that all waste that is going to create it in this food market goes back into the food market. So the first scenario can be understood more as an overarching scenario. It's more a general view of how we actually change the way we are doing groceries in the futures. So we are getting it from one place, but from different stakeholders, not only one big supermarket, but also local suppliers. You can also have your own local hydro garden, and you know, to grow is the new to go. And the second scenario is getting a little bit outside of the food market, because we are focusing here on one of the most challenging topics when it comes to the future of food, and it's how we are changing the way we are consuming meat. Because, you know, the consumption of meat and the production of meat has a very long chain on economical and some very long chain of like the loss of biodiversity, etc. You know what I mean. So I just lost the. Yeah. So we were asking in this scenario, what if discounter meat disappears from the supermarket, but meat itself remains accessible? So we were speculating that meat is disappearing from the food market, and the only way to get your meat is by getting you the whole animal. So we created a speculative business model, which is called Farm Buddy. And it works in a way that you can collaborate with local agriculture, and you just can get your animal via an online platform. And you can actually configure the life of your animal, and you can also choose how is the animal going to live, how is it going to be fed, and you can also observe your animals. So you have kind of a, maybe you see it in my camera, you have kind of a Tamagotchi, which is linked to the data of your cow, for example. And it tells you how your cow is, how it feels. So it is going good, is it getting ill and something. And so you have actually your farm buddy at home as kind of a pet. And yes, it's a part of a empathic technology. And so how can technology also help us to, closing up our relationship to farm animals? And in the farm buddy scenario, you can not only have your own cow, but you can also have your chicken, for example. And this is what you see here, the yellow one. This is our egg o'clock. So every time your egg, your chicken lays an egg, it's a winging. And actually a chicken lays like 4 eggs a week. So that's not pretty much. And if you want to have a big breakfast with your family, with eggs or scrambled eggs, so you need to wait pretty long. And the aim of this scenario was to question about how many control does the producer or the consumer wants to have when it comes to meat consumption. And how can we build a relationship to farm animals and also realize the benefits of farm animals, because we are not talking about a faraway future, but about the soon and now. And in the soon and now, the consumption of meat will not completely disappear. And also meat on our plates is part of our traditions and part of our eating cultures. So we are reflecting about how can we still have meat, but in a very responsible way, because you can have your cow, which lives for 4 years and is getting slaughtered after that. And also all the parts of your animal are going to be consumed. So from nose to tail. So we're not eating only the steaks or the burgers from the cow, but we actually eating everything from it. So, and it can be sausaged. And the sausage itself can also be upgraded with vegetables. So we have here our vegetarized sausage, and we actually produce it also in real life. So we had our sausage with beetroot. And it was kind of a, unusual experience, because the beetroot made the sausage a little bit sweet. And it was, also the participants in the workshop were also very surprised about the taste of it. But most of them found it very, interesting. And most of them also said, it would be cool if this would exist in the near future. So that was the second scenario. And now we're going to the third one, and it's called From Leaf to Root. And we are focusing on the tree as a very important stakeholder in the bioeconomy. And we are asking, what can we learn from the tree for our future food? And does nutrition always mean eating in the traditional way? And So we created our urban food garden, not our urban food garden, our urban forest garden, sorry, with our forest bar. And there you also, because the forests are having also big issues when it comes to climate change. Also in Germany, we have a lot of monocultures when it comes to forests, and they are pretty, yes, we have a lot of issues with like insects and heat, and yeah, it's super dry the last year. So we also wanted to create a little bit attention on trees, and also what because they are actually creating our oxygen. They're producing our oxygen, and so therefore they are just for us the most important stakeholder when it comes to create a sustainable future. And trees are also they are not pretty well researched until now. So there are a lot of things of trees that we still don't know. And we were also working together with Tobias from the Thünen Institute, and he also said that with trees, it's almost the same as with oceans, because they are everywhere, we see them everywhere, but still we don't know much about them. And one of the hidden powers of trees are the secondary plant compounds. And this is also where this scenario is focusing on. So secondary plant compounds are like, you can say they have like hidden like molecules and stuff. For example, like natural aspirin, for example. And we, in this scenario, we developed this a little bit further, and we were speculating about what kind of novel plant compounds can be found in the future, and how can we consume them. And this was an interesting point in this project, because in our team, we're talking a lot about how does the artifact is going to look like, and what is the eating culture behind it. And this scenario is pretty close on the intersection of medicine and food, comparable to alcohol, for example. It's also medicine, food, and also enjoyment, pleasure. And we were then deciding that we are not going to create something which is edible in a traditional way, but something that we can consume via inhalation. So we created kind of it looks a little bit like a coffee maker. And because time was a very important element in this scenario, because trees have a very different perception of time as humans. A tree which is 100 years old is still pretty young. And we wanted to create something which takes time also a little bit further. So we say, okay, it's not the fast food culture, but we take our time to prepare it, and we take our time to inhale it and to consume it. And we call it forest in a glass. And because, maybe you know the German word Waldbaden. It's like forest bathing. I don't know if it's the right translation. But if you go to the forest and you're breathing the air, you're getting like kind of relaxed, because trees are absorbing compounds that are making you feel like this. And so we had like, okay, we're having our forest in our glass and we're inhaling it. And we also were playing a little bit with the breathing mask as a symbol of our current society. COVID-19 changed the way we are having our social interactions and how we are going to see in the public. Very radical. And so we were also asking the question, how is our breathing mask getting an important part of our future everyday life? And this is one scenario where you can see, okay, wearing my breathing mask in the train, for example, is no longer something very annoying, but it can also have something can also be pleasurable. And here you see in this picture how this could look like in reality. So that was the tree and our farm animals. And in this point in the exhibition, we are changing a chapter. We are going from the visible stakeholders to the invisible stakeholders of the bioeconomy. And we are talking about microbes. This can be bacteria, algae, viruses. And we were choosing or focusing on this because we are making an important step in our evolution. We managed to domesticate plants and animals, and we are now able to domesticate microbes. So novel biotechnologies enable us to get more and more knowledge about bacteria, about what they're doing, how they function, how they work. And we are also getting able to use bacteria and microbes for our own purposes. And microbes also played always a very important role in our food culture. And this you're going to see in the fifth scenario when it comes to fermentation, which is actually enabled by microbes. In the first of these two scenarios, we are focusing on the algae. You know, algae is a very nutritious food source of the future, and they have plenty of good or healthy elements. And we were also focusing on these novel technologies I mentioned, on novel biotechnologies. So we created the Nori bioreactor for home usage, and it's kind of a smart home kitchenware. So you see here in this picture, this is our bioreactor. So you can actually have your algae and it's growing there, and you can dry it in these containers, and you can use the dried powder of the algae. And these three objects you see here are actually presenting three different steps of how we can manipulate organisms. So the first step you can see in this one, it's our light organ. And you can imagine that the algae is flowing into this device. And here the algae is modified just by using different light and oxygen settings. And you can actually, no matter what kind of organism, or also fruits and vegetables, can be modified only by changing their environment, their light, how much water they get, how much oxygen or air or sun they get. And so this is the first step, how you can modify something. And then we go a little bit further, and I also have it here in live in the exhibition. This is the Nori DNA scan and edit tool. And here we are focusing on genetic engineering and synthetic biology. So we are actually pretending with this device, you can scan the substrate of your algae, and you can edit the DNA of this algae just like with a drag and drop tool actually. And this is also how synthetic biologists imagine their future. They said it should get easier and easier to manipulate or to edit an organisms. And it actually works. Like I can put another kind of DNA from another organism into something, and I can create a completely new organisms. And we took the algae as as an actor in this scenario, because if we took a tomato or pig, then we have a very emotional reaction. We said, no, this is something we can't do. We can't play God. We can't change how a pig is going to look like in the future. But when it comes to the algae, we are actually, it's not kind of an emotional topic. So in our scenario, we describe a fictional recipe where you can change an algae in a way that it tastes like cacao powder. And you can create a totally sustainable and social and as a fair trade chocolate, for example. And then we're asking the question, how far can we go if we're interacting or if we're rewriting the code of life of the organisms? And then we also, in our scenario, we're also describing how this technology can be misused to create new drugs or poisonous things. And so the visitors in the exhibition can then decide, is this something I want to have at home or better not? And this leads us to the fifth scenario. If we say, well, like having such a genetic editing tool at home to have my own synthetic algae or my own synthetic organism, I think that's pretty creepy. Then we can go back to traditional methods like fermentation. And we can also alter, or we can also, these technologies has also very huge impact on our health. Because a very important thing of our health is our microbiome. Our microbiome sits actually in our intestines, in our guts, and everything we eat just brings a huge bunch of bacteria with it. And all the bacteria, they live in our guts actually. And they actually manage also how we feel. You see here, it's the gut-brain axis. So, and there are actually researchers at the moment that are focusing on how you can heal depressions just through your microbiome. And what you eat is what you are in this case, because if you have a very diverse food, you also have a very, very diverse microbiome. And the more diversity, the better it is for your health. So in this scenario, we are speculating about how we can also, shaping our microbiome. And therefore, we created the bacterial seed bombs, which actually have some bacterial strains that may be good for your health, or maybe you say, okay, maybe I need some more strains of Ruminococcus, because at the moment you can check your microbiome with analysis, and if this technology, if these innovations are going further, you maybe end up someday that tracking our microbiome works in the same way as tracking our fitness, for example. And this microwave seed bombs is also something that we developed in real life. So for our food box, and you see it here. So it actually exists in real life. It's not working in the way that we're pretending it in the scenario. So you cannot just shape your microbiome in a certain specific way, but it is a very healthy food actually. And the end of the scenario, you already have seen it in the video, is the healthy shit bag. Because in this scenario, we also have the healthy shit deposit, and because even the most sustainable food and the most healthy food, at some point, it needs to say goodbye. And in this case, we are actually producing a resource which is pretty important in the bioeconomy, and it is our shit. So, and how can we lead it back into into our circular economy? Because you can use it to create some fertilizers and stuff. And so we are actually closing the loop with the last artifacts. So this was, a very short introduction into the scenarios, and I hope you enjoyed it. We also have some polls I don't know if we can, but maybe you can do it afterwards, after the questions or the discussions.
Thank you very, very much, Lynn. We already have some questions in the chat. The first one is when you talked about from fact to artifact, if you have a reading list and if you could send them to those who are interested, or
yes.
if they can write an email so that you can.
Yes, just write me an email and I can answer to this.